We're here with John DiLeonardo of Humane Long Island, formerly Lion, or Long Island Orchestrating for Nature. John is a New York State licensed wildlife rehabilitator and nuisance wildlife control operator. Duck Defenders, an international project of Humane Long Island, is the leading online resource for domestic waterfowl rescue and advocacy in North America. Duck Defenders advises rescues and municipalities all across the continent about how to amicably resolve issues concerning ducks, geese, and other wildlife in their communities. So it's recently come to the attention of the Staten Islander news organization that wild turkeys, who have lived on Staten Island for as long as many residents can remember, are once again slated for control as nuisance wildlife. John is familiar with this issue and can speak on some of the concerns related to turkeys on Staten Island. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the first question that I had is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization?
Yeah, so I'm an anthrozoologist. I'm a wildlife rehabilitator. Humane Long Island is the leading animal advocacy organization on Long Island. And we do lots of fowl rescue from all 5 boroughs all the way to Montauk. We also work with rescues all over the country on projects most often related to waterfowl. Like we were just in Pennsylvania assisting the USDA with the capture and relocation of some domestic ducks who were abandoned in East Buffalo Township. And we have a few other projects like that lined up for this year. We're actually working on another project in Ohio this week. So yeah, we help all sorts of communities with niche things like this, trying to be animal advocates and amicably resolving conflicts with wildlife whenever we can.
Oh, awesome. There was an additional question that I wanted to ask. So what does humane mean?
Humane, that's a great question. Yeah, humane means typically non-lethal. It means kind. It means thinking from the perspective of the animal too. Obviously, rounding up and killing animals is not humane. It's just thinking selfishly from the perspective of the human without thinking about these animals who actually have been here longer than humans ever colonized, even longer than the Native Americans colonized America. So it's important that we learn to coexist with animals, and I think aiming for coexistence is always the key to any humane management method.
Okay. Thank you so much for that answer. That question was actually from another one of the editors here. So
Great.
what is the history of turkeys on Staten Island in particular and in New York City more generally? Where did they originally come from and how did they get to the city?
Yeah, it's a great question. So wild turkeys are actually native to North America, and they were widespread when the first colonists came here, even arguably before the Native Americans were even here. So at that time, wild turkeys occupied all of what is considered New York State, south of the Adirondack Mountains, including all of New York City and Staten Island. When the European settlers came and colonized, these gentle birds just actually walked right up to the humans. Very friendly and curious birds, but and not really knowing the danger that these settlers posed to them. So unfortunately, very quickly by the mid 1800s, wild turkeys went extinct in New York State. And the survivors were abducted onto farms and inbred into the domestic turkeys, which are killed by the millions for Thanksgiving now every year. So obviously these birds were indigenous here; they were native here. So about in the 1950s, I think the late 1940s, early 1950s, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation decided it was a good thing to have these birds here. They were native. They ate a lot of a lot of ticks and other insects that that people typically will consider pests. So they tried to relocate them back here. There were a lot of turkeys still established in Pennsylvania that were moving, onto the skirts of New York State. So the DEC actually captured a bunch of those turkeys, very similar to the way we actually just captured turkeys down oh no, sorry, we captured ducks down in Pennsylvania using rocket propelled nets to capture these animals, and then relocated them all over New York State. So they now have reestablished, and there's even hunting seasons for them. But a lot of people they like having turkeys here. And a lot of people who may not remember turkeys being so plentiful here, that's because they weren't, because they were nearly extinct here. They were really extinct here for a large portion, for about 100 years in New York State. But for thousands of years before that, they were here. So I think it's a good thing that the turkeys are back. And it's a good discussion to have now, so people can understand their significance here in New York State and learn how to coexist with them.
So the turkeys were actually brought to New York State on purpose. Like they
Yep.
were here and they were brought here on purpose.
Yeah, well, they were here predating the colonial settlers. And then the settlers, just from overhunting and overharvesting of their eggs, they quickly, made them extinct in New York State. And then, yes, then they were reintroduced about 100 years later back into New York State. And now they've started to reestablish their populations back to what they used to.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So, does the general public consider the turkeys to be a problem? And have turkeys always been considered a nuisance on Staten Island as they are presently being considered?
Like I said, the turkeys have been here on Staten Island longer than the humans have been here. Again, we may not remember that because a lot of people moved here during the time periods when they were nearly extinct and when they were trying to be reintroduced here. Wild turkeys can fly. They can travel long distances, um, but they've been here for a very, very long time. And I think most people who get to know the wild turkeys do typically, care for them. They're very curious, very gentle animals, very interesting to watch, especially with their young. Wild turkeys were actually so beloved in our nation's history that Benjamin Franklin actually wanted them to be our nation's bird rather than the eagle, calling wild turkeys birds of courage. Similarly, Abraham Lincoln was the first president to unofficially pardon a turkey, because in 1863 they got a turkey donated to them from a farm for Christmas dinner, and Abraham Lincoln's son Tad fell in love with the turkey and convinced his dad on Christmas Eve not to eat the turkey and to keep that turkey as a companion. So I think that that obviously there's some people who don't welcome the turkeys and are very loud about it. But I think by and large people enjoy wildlife. I mean, I think that there's not as much wildlife as a lot of people would like in New York City due to urban sprawl. So it's important for us to respect the wildlife that we still have and learn to coexist with them. Obviously, if they are nesting on your front lawn, and they may get aggressive during the nesting season because they're protecting their babies just like any good mama or papa would. So I get why some people would be upset by that, but there's always hazing techniques to get them away from there. A lot of times they're frequenting areas where people are feeding them. It's best just to keep wild animals wild and not to feed them. The wild turkeys can forage very well on their own. And it's good for them to have a healthy fear of humans. So I encourage people not to feed them. If you do care about them, just enjoy them from a distance, just like you would any other animal.
Okay. Are there residents or politicians on Staten Island that are in favor of the birds and leaving them where they are?
I've heard from lots of residents. I haven't been in conversations with politicians as of late about this, But maybe it's a good time to circle back with them. I wasn't in touch with de Blasio's administration about the wild turkeys because I had been involved with clipping the wings for some of them that were relocated actually to the Catskills to Anthoff Animal Sanctuary, which is a wonderful place for mostly for domestic animals, but did kindly take I think about 100 birds relocated from one area of Staten Island several years ago. So I had a conversation with the mayor's office in de Blasio's administration a couple years back. I was just mentioned to them that I was up, visiting those wild turkeys, and I was actually congratulating them on the success of their humane deer management program on Staten Island. They had just come out with a press release talking about the success of that program. So I said, hey, are you guys considering any egg oiling or anything related to the wild turkey management? But they replied that their focus was educating the public that these animals were native to New York City, and just teaching them how to coexist with them, which is something we certainly support. I think that oftentimes we overmanage wildlife, and that's how we saw these turkeys and Canada geese and lots of species go nearly extinct in New York State before they were reintroduced. And then when they become plentiful again, whether it's government authorities, whether it's hunters or just neighbors who aren't used to seeing them, we're very, very quick just to try to kill them off again. I think we need to learn from past experiences and realize that these animals are valuable resources not just for us but intrinsically for themselves. They deserve to be here and share our communities just as much as any one of our neighbors.
Okay. Does your group have solutions for controlling the turkey population that do involve more humane methods than some of those that have been considered?
Yeah, absolutely. Effective ways of managing turkey populations are simply using exclusion devices and hazing methods like motion activated sprinklers to keep them out of areas where you don't want them, like maybe on your front lawn. But these animals, they do need to they do need areas of their own, so we can't expect to just eliminate them off of the island. And I mean, even if you were to do a roundup and kill a whole bunch of turkeys, they're just going to bounce right back. Like I said, they're flighted. They can lay about a dozen dozen eggs with baby turkeys um, hatching just to for every turkey couple. You don't even need a turkey couple. You can have a tom who has many females. So rounding them up and killing them, they just bounce back. I mean, I've been licensed as a nuisance wildlife control operator in New York State, and even the handbook says that lethal management methods are just a quick fix solution. They're not good for long-term management. Again, we need to educate people that these animals are here to stay. And if they're in areas that you don't want them, there are ways to keep them out of that area. Again, don't feed them. If you find them, pecking on your cars, well, get a car cover. Keep your car, lasting beautiful much longer anyway. Um, there's these animals are going to be in New York City. They're going to be on Staten Island. Even if you were to round up and kill them, they're going to come back very, very quickly. We often find with wild animals that if you do kill them, they bounce back even quicker than ever before, simply because there's now so many untapped resources for the remaining birds, or deer, or any animal. So lethal management is just, it's not something that is kind to the birds, and it's really not just an effective. It's an ineffective wildlife management technique. We encourage public education, exclusion devices, hazing techniques, and even birth control. We actually work with Suffolk County to humanely manage the geese population on Lake Ronkonkoma by oiling their eggs every year. We search for Canada goose nests. We test the eggs to see what stage of development they are. They're very predictable and when they're going to lay. And if there's, if they're very early in development, there's no sign of life in there, you pour a little corn oil on the eggs, the mama goes and sits back on those eggs, and it's non-toxic, it's non-hazardous, but her eggs don't hatch, and she doesn't have babies that season. So you can do the same thing for wild turkeys. So I think we should be looking at these types of non-lethal management methods, as well as educating the public about what they can do to keep these animals out of areas where they may consider them nuisances, like their front yard.
So you said occlusion. I'm not sure what do you mean by that?
Oh, exclusion. Like, say, if you're having if you have wild turkey, say, spending a lot of time on the roof of your house, you can put, some deterrents up there to keep them out. I mean, a natural predator for wild turkeys are great horned owls. So you can, get an owl decoy, especially, I mean, if they're smart birds. So if you just get one that doesn't move, they're probably not, it's not going to keep them away too long. But they make some that have light up eyes, that have heads that rotate, that are pretty effective at scaring these birds away before they come. I mean, I think we should always be proactive. I think if they're already established in an area, you're going to have to haze them out, maybe use some sprinklers, or, if I wouldn't recommend it during the baby season, but there's a wild turkey who's starting to nest. I mean, you could bring your hose out there and try to scare them, or bring your dog out on a leash. You don't want to you don't want to injure the turkey, but just to kind of deter them and make the area uncomfortable for them. With a lot of animals like raccoons, you can actually, if you have a raccoon in your attic, you can play some loud rock music and they will mosey on out their way, and you can just seal up the entrance that they used to get in. But with wild turkeys, they're very smart, very curious. They'll actually dance along and sing along to music. So music may not be the best thing for them, but they don't like getting wet. They don't like seeing dogs, because dogs are predators for them. They also just don't like loud noises. So, you can get out there and, just start yelling and waving your arms around like you would if you saw a bear, and they'll mosey on the way. You just want to make that area uncomfortable to them. So they'll go out into the woods and in an area that is more comfortable for them. But again, if people are feeding them, if they're leaving their refuse easily accessible to them, these birds are just going to move in. And I think most people, when they first move in, they said they're very gentle birds. So people enjoy them. People tend to feed them. They may have, easy access bird feeders that they use all through the spring, the summer. Some people use them all year round. We actually tell people to refrain from feeding even the wild birds during the warmer months. Leave some feed out, in your bird feeders for the colder months, to help these birds get through the cold months, if they are still here, if they haven't migrated, or if they're migrating. But during the warmer months, always let wild animals be wild. And that's when we typically find the most conflicts, because when the wild turkeys first move in, people love them. But then in the spring and summer season, when they're having their babies, they get defensive again, just like every mama or papa would. But that's when you typically have more conflicts, where they can be more aggressive. I mean, I wouldn't say they're dangerous animals. They're not gonna, do any real damage to you, but they can be a little scary, a big bird running up on you. But the important thing to remember is, again, they're only protecting their babies. So we want to make sure that before they nest, or before they lay those eggs, that's when you're using these hazing techniques to get them out. Because obviously you don't want a dog chasing a little baby. And obviously, once they're established and they have their little babies, they're going to be protecting those babies. So try to haze them out before that even happens.
Okay. Is the turkey issue a statewide issue, or is it confined to Staten Island? I think it was primarily Staten Island politicians who were meeting about the issue. So I'm not sure if this is something that you're aware of being statewide as well.
Well, I know that the DC recently expanded turkey hunting season on on Long Island as well. But I think again, I think that's us not really learning to coexist with these animals. We hunted them to extinction here and then said, oops, we messed up, let's bring them back. And then as soon as they come back, we say, oh, let's repeat it and kill them off again. I think we really need to learn to end that cruel cycle and just focus on humane management and coexisting with these animals. Again, when it comes to management, I mean, I don't think we need to manage them, out in the wild areas. I mean, I think management should largely be limited to keeping them out of nuisance areas, out of our front lawns, maybe away from our hospitals. Um, but um, but largely learning just to coexist with these animals and be grateful that they're here because our grandparents didn't get to experience their beauty because they were all dead.
Um, okay, it looks like you actually answered a couple of the other questions as well. So, oh, there was something else
Yeah.
kind of important. What can you do if a turkey has wandered into the street and is blocking traffic? Like what can you do if you're and that was actually submitted by another editor at our paper. So, what do you do if a turkey is in the street and is just like blocking traffic?
Yeah, I mean, if traffic has come to a stop, put your car in park, get out there, wave your arms, and haze them across that street. And yeah, like I said, they're we're bigger than them. We're considered predators to them. They're if you get out there and be big and scary, they're gonna go the other way. I don't think people should really be intimidated by these birds. Again, the only time they're ever gonna get aggressive is really if you are threatening their babies. But any mom or papa would do the same thing. So I totally get it. I think if there are people who really care about turkeys too, I always want to pitch that they consider, leaving turkeys off their plates. I mean, we rescue hundreds of animals every single year, but by eating animals, we kill 200 animals a year. We actually, in addition to our wild animal work, we do a lot of farmed animal work. So we rescue turkeys often seasonally from the live slaughter markets in New York City, usually around Thanksgiving. We'll go to some of the live slaughter markets and bring them vegan turkey roasts in exchange for live turkeys, and see a nice little happy ending. Pardon some turkeys in addition to the president's. But even with those turkeys, every single turkey we get, these are turkeys that are slated for people's plates for Thanksgiving. But every single one has serious health issues that we have to work through, from bumblefoot to osteomyelitis, which is a bone infection, to upper respiratory infections. They always have the ends of their beaks cut off. They have their toes cut off. So if there are people who really care about the wild turkeys and want to see them stay safe, I encourage them to take the next step and to take turkeys and other animals off their plates because those animals are suffering even more greatly than our wild turkeys. Our wild turkeys, we may, hit them with the hose once in a while or scare them with a dog, but in factory farms, they're living in close confines with, covered in their own feces, just breeding diseases, especially now with avian flu, being widespread. I mean, I think it's never been a better time to stop eating birds.
Okay. And I think you had said you have not actually been in touch with the political leaders of late regarding this issue.
Yeah, not regarding this issue. I've been in touch with them on a whole host of other issues. So I think this is a good point now to circle back with them and see if they share the same sentiments as the previous administration. I think coexistence is the right way to go. So I hope they agree. I know um, before that, there was that relocation effort, but as we saw, the turkeys just repopulated. I don't think relocation is really successful long term for the same reasons that lethal management isn't. Just like, if we take 100 turkeys and move them somewhere in a couple years, they're going to be back, if not the following year. Same thing if we kill them. It's just a waste of taxpayer money, and it's just downright cruel.
And if residents of Staten Island are concerned about this issue and they want to help the turkeys, what can they do if they want to help the turkeys?
Yeah, well, they can reach out to us at humanelongisland.org and get involved with efforts to protect all animals, including the turkeys. They can speak to their neighbors and tell them, not to harm these animals and to educate them that these animals have been here much longer than us. They can also, again, refrain from feeding them, remove those bird feeders if they are, easily accessible to the wild turkeys, and just, again, enjoy them from a distance. I also should mention that turkeys are protected by our state cruelty laws. Um, and for wild animals, if you do, if you do harm or kill them, it's punishable by up to a year in jail or $1,000 fine. Turkeys also are they're listed as game birds in New York State. So if you are to harm them outside of hunting season, um, then you can suffer additional fines and punishments. And if you do have a hunting license, they can revoke that license. So we do want to be respectful of these animals, and as we are hazing them if they're on our properties, just to do it in a respectful manner. Don't harm them. Don't actually come in contact with them. Be big and scary. I mean, if you want to put something between you and the bird, you can get an umbrella and just open and close that umbrella. And it makes you look even bigger and scarier, and they'll go the other way. We actually do that with Canada geese when we're egg oiling. That's usually how we get the mama bird off the nest so we can oil her eggs.
Okay. And so I also wanted to ask, is there evidence that you would like to share that demonstrates the intelligence and compassion of turkeys, particularly for those unfamiliar with this type of research?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even think you need to get into studies. I think if you spend any time with these birds, play a little sweet music to them, watch them sing, watch them dance. If you visit any of our farmed animal sanctuaries, we have some great ones in New York, Tamerlane Farm Animal Sanctuary, Woodstock Farm Animal Sanctuary. You can, you can get to spend some time with their domestic brethren, and you'll find that they love having their feathers stroked. They love having their bellies rubbed. If you do frequent it, they'll remember you, and they have their favorite people. They'll talk to you. They'll come spend time with you. I mean, they're really beautiful animals. Great parents, and really gentle birds. So again, I encourage people, don't feed those turkeys in the wild. Enjoy them from a distance. But if you do feel inclined to get to know turkeys a little better, go to one of the farmed animal sanctuaries. Go to Tamerlane. Go to Woodstock. Go to Catskill, and get your fix there.
Okay. And this is another question that's submitted by the other editor of our paper, that we learned as kids that turkeys are so dumb that they'll drown when it rains. So how intelligent are they?
Oh, they're very intelligent. I mean, that's just speciesism when people say things like that. I mean, turkeys aren't drowning when they rain. They're just like us. They're just looking for shelter. They're very, very intelligent animals. Like I said, they recognize people. If you're mean to them, they'll recognize you and not want anything to do with you. Or if you're mean to them and then they have their babies, hey, they may chase you away from their babies. But if you're good to them, I mean, they may even introduce you to their babies. They're very smart. They know who's friendly. They know who's not. Um, and I think it's speciesism is just another form of prejudice, and I think it's something everyone should be aware of and try to keep in check with themselves.
Okay. And I think you had mentioned a couple of laws, but are turkeys protected by any laws such as the Endangered Species Act or the Migratory Bird Treaty? You had mentioned by the something, I forgot what you said.
Our state cruelty statutes. They're protected by our state cruelty statutes, as well as poaching regulations. They're not considered migratory birds, so they're not protected by that act. And as far as the Endangered Species Act goes, unfortunately, by the time most species reach the Endangered Species Act, endangered species listings, they might as well be extinct. So it's very important that we protect these animals early on and learn from our mistakes. Let's not make these wild turkeys extinct in New York again. Let's learn from our mistakes and appreciate the beauty and the gentleness and the courageousness, the great qualities that they have to share with us.
Well, thank you so much. And was there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't cover?
Yeah, if any politicians or residents or anyone wants to talk wild turkeys, they can feel free to reach out to me at john@humanelongisland.org or simply through our website, humanelongisland.org. We're also on social media, on Instagram and Facebook at HumaneLI.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was really great speaking with you.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing, if I could add. Um, like I said, our Duck Defenders project is a big project of ours. Last Easter, or not last Easter, in Easter 2019, the New York Times actually did a big expose about people dumping ducks and included a rescue of a bunch of ducks in Staten Island that we did. So if anyone does see white pekin ducks or any domestic waterfowl that simply don't look like they belong in that area, reach out to us too, and let's try to get them help. Because if you get a cute little duckling for Easter and you let him go in the wild, he's not going to survive, and that's illegal as well. So just like we want to respect our wild animals and keep wild animals wild, we want to respect our domestic animals and keep domestic animals domestic.
Okay. And that's something that happens around Easter, right? Where people
Yeah.
get the ducks and then they just like let them go in the wild.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
these
that's
animals, they're literally sitting ducks in the wild. They can't survive. It's as cruel as abandoning a dog or a cat. And your domestic duck is as different as a dog is from a wolf or a house cat is from a tiger.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I will. It was really great speaking with you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.